Test. I think it's recording. My name is Judd Whitaker. I was a photojournalist for the New York Times. I covered the wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. I've spent more of my life inside bulletproof vests than inside suits. I thought I had already seen everything one human being can do to another. I was wrong. I found this recorder in the wreckage of the temporary shelter we're in now, in the apartment of someone who didn't own much. An old tape recorder, the kind my editor used back in the 90s. It still works. Old things keep working when the world ends. I learned that today. If anyone finds this tape, I want them to know what happened in the first 12 hours. I want them to know about the men who held the line. I don't know how much tape I have, so I'll start from the beginning. I opened my eyes after a nearby explosion, with my face on the ground, in the dirt, the taste of dust and blood in my mouth. I don't know how long I was out, seconds maybe. When the dust settled, all I could see were soldiers' boots around me, spent casings falling and bouncing off the asphalt near my face. I could see the rain, but I couldn't hear anything, just a thin, high-pitched whine. I felt the pain in my head and the warm red liquid running down my forehead, down to my eyebrow. Some shrapnel or debris from the blast had caught me in the forehead. I put my hand there, looked at my fingers. Red, but not much. I had seen shrapnel wounds up close often enough to know that one wasn't going to kill me. What was coming down the avenue? That would. Someone shouted at me and pulled me up by my vest. "On your feet, kid," were the words I read on his lips, because I still couldn't hear a thing. A sergeant, his face covered in soot, with the eyes of a man who hadn't slept in a long time. Then he shoved a rifle against my chest, so hard it almost knocked me down again, and went back to shooting at those things. A rifle. Less than half a day earlier, I had handed over my camera. It stayed on a field table at a command post that probably doesn't exist anymore, next to my lenses, my press card, everything that said who I was until that morning. An officer asked me if I knew how to shoot. I said yes. Years embedded with troops teach you more than we like to admit. He didn't ask anything else. By that point, they were taking any pair of hands that could handle a rifle's kick. I gripped my rifle and rejoined the men I had known for only a few hours, but who were the only line keeping the city from total destruction. The line, 2 blocks of avenue, military vehicles parked crosswise, sandbags stacked in a hurry, barbed wire that was useless because those things don't feel pain. Behind us, the city being evacuated. In front of us, the city coming to eat us. My hearing came back little by little, muffled at first, as if I were underwater. First the heavy calibers, then the screams. Last of all, that sound, like a raging swarm of violent people stripped of all sanity. The line wouldn't hold for long, but the soldiers fought bravely. I had never seen anything like it in any war I covered. And mind you, I've watched men hold lost positions on 3 continents. In every war, the enemy takes cover, falls back, feels fear. Not these. 1 fell, 3 came over him, dropped 10, 100 more came. The math of it became clear to everyone at the same time, and nobody said a word. Between military vehicles, shelling, and the walking dead, the action never stopped. It was hours of combat for minutes of lost communications. The sergeant's radio spat static, fragments of orders. Every new silence on the radio was a piece of the map going dark. The sun was still high when I understood that we weren't defending the city. We were just buying time, and the currency was people. Until the line broke. The helicopters stopped coming with supplies, running late at first, then simply not coming at all, and the infected began to sweep through everything. All I could do was keep my finger on the trigger, watching brave soldiers being swallowed by endless crowds of people, driven mad by an unknown, lethal plague. When the order to fall back came, it was already too late. When the order came, it came out of sync with command. Later, thinking back on it, it made sense. Command was no longer a place. It was a pile of radios screaming at one another. The bombardment came before everyone could even get out. We climbed into one of the only armored vehicles the dead hadn't overrun. 5 of us, crammed into that steel darkness. the driver flooring it over whatever was in the way. I didn't look through the slits. I had seen enough. And the bombardment hit us as we were crossing a bridge that was supposed to be blown only after a convoy that had joined us got across. Someone, somewhere, pressed a button too early, or read the time wrong, or simply couldn't stand to wait. We watched friendly fire hit 2 buses and a Humvee. Evacuation buses. I did look through the slit that time. I couldn't help it. A reporter's instinct is a factory defect. Nothing was left, and the bridge collapsed before we ourselves could get across safely. The ground stopped existing beneath us. The fall was brutal. We hit the bank, not the water. Luck or bad luck, I still haven't decided. But the vehicle was wrecked, lying on its side. The driver was out cold, hanging from his seatbelt. One of the soldiers was screaming in pain with a broken leg. I got away with minor injuries. I was starting to think I was spending a lifetime's worth of luck in a single afternoon. The commander yelled for everyone to get out. But only he. One more wounded soldier and I made it out. The one with the broken leg, dragging himself, howling. The commander hauling him by the vest. The driver never woke up. And one of the men was pinned in the wreckage, the metal folded over him like a closed hand. We pulled. We made levers out of whatever we had. The commander nearly tore his own fingers off trying. The infected closed in fast, leaping off the ruins of the bridge without a second thought. 30, 40 feet down, without hesitating. Most of them broke on impact and then tried to crawl to the vehicle anyway. Legs destroyed, dragging themselves with their fingernails. We couldn't save the soldier pinned in the wreckage. He was the only one of us who understood that before everyone else did. We heard just one shot, after he yelled from inside for no one to look back. No one looked. The commander stood still for 2 seconds. Just 2. Then he said the phrase that became the name of this piece of my memory. No time to grieve. By that point, decisions were no longer made with strategy, just pure survival. Every step, every corner, every door that opened could be the last. We stopped planning and started reacting, which is what's left when the plan dies. The streets were infested. The collapse was total. The soldier with the broken leg held on longer than anyone had the right to ask. We took turns carrying him, and with every block, he got paler and we got slower. He knew. We knew. Nobody said it. He was the one who decided. He practically forced us to leave him behind. He sat down against a car, pulled the pin on a grenade, held the lever tight in his hand, and ordered me and the commander to move away. The commander started to argue, and he wouldn't let him. He said a man has the right to choose the last useful thing he does. He tossed me a lighter with initials carved into it with a knife. CB. He said his younger brother was at a military base in another state, and that if I ever found him, I was to tell him that his brother fought to the end and died a hero. He didn't tell me his name, just the initials, which were already on the lighter. I think he figured that was enough, and it is. CB, if you exist, and if this tape ever reaches you, he fought to the end. I saw it. Part of me knew we wouldn't get far carrying him, but I wasn't prepared to leave anyone else behind. Knowing a thing and accepting a thing are different. The whole war fits inside that difference. The infected were running toward us when he pressed the horn of a car abandoned in the middle of the street, drawing them in. The horn never stopped. He must have jammed it somehow, or left his arm on it. I don't know. We had turned 2 corners at a run when we heard the explosion. The horn stopped with it. No place was safe. We found people who had been bitten, still alive, begging for help, and turning 10 seconds after reaching out a hand. 10 seconds. That's enough time for a person to say their own name, plead for their family, start a sentence and not finish it. We found survivors in the window of a townhouse who were swallowed by a horde before I could even signal. I raised my arm, and by the time it got up there was no one left to wave to. The commander walked point. I covered the rear. We didn't talk. There was nothing to say that the street wasn't already saying. We passed several abandoned military barricades, some of them intact, which was worse. Intact means there wasn't even time to fight. We passed a makeshift safe zone in a police station, destroyed, engulfed in flames. All the safe zones that soldiers had died to protect, or to buy time for, were falling one by one, like lights going out down a long hallway. No checkpoint was safe. It was there, in the middle of that burning station, that my right hand did a strange thing. It went up to my chest looking for the camera. The framing was already set in my head. My hand found only the rifle sling. I think that was the exact moment the photographer died, and what was left is what's speaking on this tape. Then I heard a projectile whip past my ear and explode 500 meters away, in a building. The air displacement of a tank firing is violent. I was already on the ground by the time I understood what it was. Down at the end of the street, you could see the silhouette of a tank firing in every direction it could, the cannon turning, the coaxial machine gun spitting fire, while a group of survivors evacuated a lost safe zone. We got closer and closer, close enough to witness the brave battle of a group of soldiers and one tank against an entire city. A sniper in an adjacent building gave us a signal as we approached. 3 flashes of a flashlight, a pause, 2 more, and the tank was careful not to fire our way. But the wave of death didn't stop. A multitude, and the tank ended up beached on a pile of them, its treads spinning over bodies, cannon pointed at the sky, useless. A 60-ton monument. There was nothing left to do. The crew abandoned the tank through the hatches and fell back shooting, covering one another. We found the sniper after breaking into a building. He was younger than his voice on the radio suggested, thin. He didn't talk much. He escorted us to another building that had been cut off. The stairs had been blown and blocked on the lower floors, and the only way in was through an adjacent building, where the soldiers had rigged a crossing out of wooden boards, 3 stories above the street. Clever, I thought, crossing those planks with a sea of hands stretching up below. But it was a building in the middle of the city, cut off from everything, with 12 survivors and 7 exhausted soldiers. An island. That was the word that came to mind. The shelter's situation was precarious. Some wounded, everyone scared. The windows were sealed with mattresses and tape, and no one lit a light near them. Down below, the streets were nearly overrun by the infected. We traded information in a living room that seemed to have belonged to an elderly couple who weren't among the survivors. Framed photos on the shelf, a folded blanket on the arm of the couch, blood pressure medication on the table with the blister pack half empty. Nobody sat on their couch. I can't explain why, but nobody sat. Everything was improvised. The building was old, but the few staircases had been easy to seal off. The situation was critical, and the last communications received gave no sign of rescue. Command was too busy trying to save the bases outside the urban perimeter. It was total chaos, and no place was safe, inside or outside the city. Outside, it was getting dark. I stood for a while with my hand in my pocket, gripping CB's lighter, running my thumb over the knife-scratched initials. It became a habit in a matter of hours. I looked at myself in a mirror for the first time that day, in the old couple's bathroom, by the light of a flashlight propped on the sink. I looked like I had aged 10 years in just a few hours. The cut on my forehead had dried ugly. My face was a mask of soot with 2 eyes in it. I was still wearing a bulletproof vest that read press, and a torn cap that said the same. Nothing had prepared me for what was happening. No war, no front line, and I consider myself a lucky man to have survived this far. Lucky. I kept repeating the word until it lost its meaning. 12 civilians, 7 soldiers, a brick island in the middle of a sea of the dead. Late that night, communications were established with what was left of command. A military radio, a technician turning a dial for 20 minutes, and then a clean, calm voice. Someone speaking from very far away from the problem. The city would be sterilized. That was the word they used. Sterilized, as if the city were a dirty instrument. An operation would be conducted to cleanse the major urban centers and keep the infected massing in the cities from spilling out to attack other areas. Command made it clear that the lives inside that building would be acceptable casualties in the war against the infection, and that at dawn, the city would be lit up with the power of a few suns. Casualties. The voice on the radio said the word and cut off. I sat there, chewing on it in the dark. In a news piece I would have written losses, the softer word editors like. but I'm not going to correct what command said, or the word that kept hammering in my head. Casualties. Casual. As if we were mere happenstance. Maybe we were. That's when I found this recorder, going through the apartment of someone who didn't own much. A bed, a chair, a box of tapes, and this. I decided to record everything we went through on it. Countless heroes in the war against the tide of the dead, and no reporter left alive to tell it. Except one, with no camera, with a rifle and a tape. A tape. A record of the first hours of the outbreak. Even without any certainty that the tape would survive all of it, I knew my chances were small, and my companions' chances were small. The soldier in charge of the shelter gathered everyone and decided to lay it all on the table. No viable solution for everyone had been worked out in the private room the soldiers used, and the fact that he admitted it in front of civilians told me everything about the man. He could have lied. It would have been easier. He didn't. After the murmuring of the survivors and the small panic that set in when they learned they had to leave the shelter before dawn, a civilian raised his hand and said he was a retired commercial airline pilot, a man of 70, his wife at his side, her hand clamped onto his forearm ever since the word sterilized had been spoken. The commander asked him whether he could get a plane off the ground, if they found one. He confirmed it, without drama. He said he still flew sometimes, private single-engine planes, and that he had years of experience. He had been on his way to the airport with his wife to catch a charter flight when he got stuck in traffic earlier that day. Then the plan formed quickly, the way desperate plans form, with no one offering a better alternative. Within a few hours, everyone was ready to head for the only nearby airport. Ammunition counted and redistributed, the wounded bandaged, a map marked up in pen by flashlight, and everyone was praying there was still a plane left for the old man to fly. Half the group of survivors died before we even made it around the block. I wish I had a gentler way to say that, and I don't. We came down the planks, set foot on the street, and the street collected its toll on the spot. There were too many infected, and the darkness of night made the urban landscape even more chaotic and dangerous. The city without power was a blackness full of shapes, and every shape could be a lamppost, a car, or a brain-eating monster. You only found out when it was already too late. The sniper moved through the insides of the buildings, alone, radioing the best route. Now and then you could see his flashlight in the darkness, 3 stories up, or the flash his weapon made as he dropped infected inside the buildings, a mute flash in a window, and a second later the crack. He was clearing the path ahead of us. Guardian angel is an expression I've never once used without irony. I'm using it now. Around us, gunfire and small explosions flared here and there, in other parts of the city. More survivors, fighting with everything they had. Maybe they were trying to get out of the city too. God help them, I kept thinking. And I also thought no one would. But there was no time. The only way was forward. The goodbye to my commander came near the airport. I had known the man for less than a day, but I already respected him as if he were a general. I never learned his name. In my head, he is the commander, with capital letters, and that's how he'll stay. A group of infected attacked one of the soldiers in the darkness. His flashlight spun in the black, slashing across the walls, and the shooting started and stopped fast. A circle formed around the survivors, backs in, guns out, and the dead began attacking without pause, coming from every street at once, the wave finding us in the dark by sound. The sniper dropped several of them before they even got close. We couldn't see it, only heard the bodies falling, but there were many. There were always many. Many was the only constant of the entire day, and the commander was attacked, bitten, and dragged into the darkness. I saw his flashlight get lost in the middle of them. He didn't scream. He just kept firing his pistol until the bullets ran out, the muzzle flashes moving away from us, swallowed by the crowd. And even after the bullets were gone, I saw infected falling to the ground, being struck down. The flashlight stayed lit a little longer, fallen, lighting up legs stepping over it. I squeezed CB's lighter in my pocket until the initials printed themselves into my palm, and kept walking, because that's what he would have ordered me to do. No time to grieve. The words were his. The duty to live by them was now mine. Few made it to the airport. The sniper said his goodbye when we reached the last building near the airport. Over the radio, in the same voice as always, chewing his words along with whatever it was he chewed. He had been bitten earlier. He hadn't told anyone. He just carried on with the mission, doing what he knew how to do, climbing stairs, finding windows, clearing streets. He did the math on how much time he had left, and spent all of it on us. One more hero forged in death, taken by the virus. He said, "Straight ahead, clear lane for 300 meters. It's been an honor." And before anyone could answer, a flash was seen in the building's window, and then only the sound of static. Nobody turned off the radio for a while. We reached the airport runway after walking through hell. The plane wasn't in the hangar, and what was left of the airport was in flames. We stepped out of a hell of darkness into a hell of fire. The terminal burning, a jet broken in half at the head of the runway, fuel burning in pools that turned the asphalt into a mirror of fire. The few of us who remained fell into despair, and I don't judge them, because dawn was coming soon. The city would be sterilized and vaporized, and you could already see an orange glow on the horizon, and no one could say whether it was the fire, the sunrise, or the end arriving early. The pilot's wife was crying, still clutching his arm. The old man stared at the empty hangar with a look I knew well, the look of a beaten man. When everything seemed lost, the sound of engines cut through the weeping of the desperate survivors. A small plane appeared on the far side of the airport, maneuvering on the runway, while the dead ran circles around it like dogs chasing a car. Someone else had survived, and had come up with the same plan as ours. Everyone ran toward the runway and started waving from a distance, shouting, jumping. We formed a semicircle around the survivors, those who still had weapons and ammunition on the outside, the unarmed on the inside, and that's where we would make our last stand. The expression had always sounded to me like something out of a movie. The plane didn't seem to want to stop. Then our guns lit up the night, firing at everything that ran toward us. The semicircle spitting fire, each of us praying the ammunition would hold and the plane would stop for us. My rifle grew hot in my hand. The plane went right past us, and for a moment, all hope was gone. Then it slowed down, up ahead, and a rear door opened, and a few Marines appeared in it and began shooting to cover us, holding the corridor between us and the ramp. Everyone who made it to the airport managed to escape in time. Everyone. It was a stroke of luck. The plane turned around at the end of the runway and lifted off over a carpet of outstretched hands. We hadn't gotten far from the city when the flash came, turning the rest of the night into day. Nobody looked straight at it. Nobody spoke. The whole cabin glowed orange inside for one long second, and the city where I almost died became a line of fire on the horizon behind us. 12 hours. That's how long the world I knew lasted. 12 hours of door after door, line after line, goodbye after goodbye. In the blink of an eye, we were flying over a safe zone surrounded by the infected. A maximum security prison turned into a local army command base. Walls, wire, searchlights, sweeping the sea that beat against them down below. A bigger island. I hope it lasts longer than the last one. Before we landed, one of the soldiers handed me a bottle of water and told me to sit down. "Press," he read off my vest. "First time I've seen a journalist in combat," and he gave a small smile. I smiled back, a little awkwardly, the rifle between my knees. "Rest, soldier. No war ends in a day."